Hello, everybody. I am here with Lilu today, and we're going to speak about the Tantric Transformational journey. Welcome, Lilu.
Hi, thank you.
So you are somebody who you have been. I know you since at least 8-9 years from the Tantra world, and I've seen you do workshops. I've seen you be a participant. I've seen you lead women's group. I see you go to Russia and do things in Russian, and you come back. You go to Bali and you do things in English. Like, tell us a little bit about you and your background and what you're doing right now, because I know that you're in Europe. I think you're in Amsterdam. What's the next little things that you have coming up?
So, yeah, the journey has been really long, so I don't even know where to start. It's been a lifelong journey, and I think I was like born with some kind of a tantric understanding of life, and for a long time I really suffered because I didn't understand why other people are not understanding it, and I felt really lonely in that. And then I started meeting people like me, and my journey started. And since then, there's been so much exploration and learning and beautiful things happening. And what I really enjoy doing is exploring life and learning about life. And I'm constantly studying something, and I'm just incorporating all of those things that are working for me, that are inspiring me into my work.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've also been doing a lot of things. Like you said, I'm holding a lot of women's groups and sessions and tantric couples groups and things like this. And what's happening right now, what is alive right now, especially after all the quarantine things, I started taking most of my work online.
Yeah.
And I'm being really, really inspired by that actually at the moment, unexpectedly. But something that is coming up live that is also really inspiring me is one of my biggest projects. That's a school which is called the Feminine Codes for Women. And there are several levels, and each one of them is a deep, long retreat. And most of them are happening in Bali, which is my most favorite place in the world. So this is also one reason why I'm really, really inspired by that. Every time I'm really looking forward to go back there, because it's almost like a natural temple of the feminine. Because when you come there, you can just feel the feminine activating in all kinds of different ways. So yeah, this is something that is really alive right now. And also one thing about it, I used to do it only in Russian, and now it's coming up in English. So that's a special celebration for me. This is something I was really looking forward to.
Something that I feel about you is that, like what I said in the beginning, I feel like you're always also a participant. I've been at festivals, and sometimes it feels like all the teachers click and they are kind of not there, think they have already done it. And with you, I feel like you're always on a journey. And I guess that's why we're speaking about the transformational journey. And what is it that makes you never feel like as you're always in the middle of the journey? Like, how don't you never ever get bored and feel like, okay, I'm just going to teach this?
I do. I do get bored, but I think it's coming in waves, you know. Sometimes I do feel like, oh my god, I know everything already, and I will never participate in one more workshop in my life, and I'm just so bored with it. And then after a while it comes back, you know. And again, it's like life cycles. Something is dying, something is being born, you know. It's always transforming. Like you said, transformation.
Yeah, and the transformation, that's what I feel, especially in Tantra Connection. We have a lot of people that are just discovering Tantra, and they're hearing, shadow work, transformation, and all these things. And many times it's like people are like, well, I don't even know what my shadow is. Like, I don't even know what a shadow is. So what about the transformation journey? How do I do that? Like, where do I start? I think that's the main question. Where do I start? So if today I would love to have like a little bit more understanding of both where to start, but what are you getting into when you start your transformation path?
Yeah, that's an amazing topic actually, and I think we can discuss it for many, many hours, not just one. But let's see where we can start with this. So actually, what comes to mind right now when you're saying this is there are so many people who are just discovering tantra, and they ask, what is tantra, what is it actually, you know? And I always say, I mean, there are many different definitions you can give it, but what I always say, what is the most important for me is that tantra is something that is incorporating everything. It's inviting everything, you know, it's accepting, it's seeing everything, the light and the dark, and all the aspects of our human self and life, and, you know, everything around us and in us. And so there comes shadow work, because as human beings we have a tendency, of course, to suppress things and avoid things and put things in the shadow, things we're being conditioned to not look at, to not accept, to think that they're bad maybe, or dangerous or ugly or whatever. You know, there's so many things we're suppressing as society. And so when we start going into tantra, it starts asking us to look at our shadow, to look at all these things we have been suppressing and denying and avoiding, in order to integrate everything, to become a whole being.
Yeah. So how do you discover, like, like people go to a workshop, or like, what would you say, or people decide in themselves, oh, I'm going to include everything, I'm going to feel everything, like how, if you have a life, I mean, now we have had more time maybe with the quarantines, but what is the step to go from like just having a normal life where you're kind of running your little hamster wheel, and then be like, okay, like, is it a conscious choice, or is it life that kind of takes you on that transformational path? How?
I think it's both. Like, there are two different ways you can go. One of them, doing a conscious practice, like, okay, I set up a practice space and I go do the practice. And one of them can be, you know, to just stop, to stop running, to stop distracting yourself, to stop all these things. That's why people go on retreats, because this is a space where you can completely stop all the patterns you're playing out in your normal life, you know, in your everyday life. And that helps you to see something that is beyond, something that is deeper than that. And then, of course, there are a zillion different tools you can use for that, because when you start seeing all these things, then, of course, you need certain tools to deal with that. Yeah. So that's one thing. But also another way is to, and I guess that other way usually works when you already have some tools and you have a basic level of awareness, and you're able to be aware of, you know, things that are underneath the surface in your everyday life as well. And then, of course, you start using everyday situations. So basically life is happening to you, and you're using everything that is happening to awaken deeper.
So maybe tell us, can you use yourself as example, or something like, how can a transformational journey look like? So we have a little bit of like, what is, and how long does it take? And are there small transformations in the big transformation? Talk a little bit about that.
I love this. Smaller transformations and big transformations. I think, I mean, in one sense, it's a lifelong journey. It's never ending, you know, and like, I see a lot of people coming onto this journey because they have some kind of a problem, and then they think, oh, I'm going to heal this problem, fix this issue, and then it's going to be done. I'm going to be all set, you know? But it doesn't work like this, because it's not really about fixing an issue. It's about life itself. It's about how you handle life, how you see life, how you experience life, how you can stay open to discover new things that are actually happening all the time, because it's ever transforming. You know, it's the mystery of life. There is no end. There is no specific form. It keeps changing. So it's never ending in one way, you know. And of course, inside of that bigger journey, there is a smaller story of, you know, me as a human being, and I have my unique set of childhood traumas and karmas and whatever. And then, I struggle with something, and then I'm looking for solutions to become closer to myself, to remember myself, to start feeling more at home in this life. And of course, that is transforming with time. And that completely depends, I guess, like if you ask how much time, it completely depends on the person and specific situation. It's very, very different. Yeah, but still, I guess the way I see it, at some point you still come to a place of understanding that you don't know anything and it's never ending.
So
And
when
then
you say,
it's like the first part of the journey is coming from the urge to control, to fix everything, to make everything perfect so that you can finally let go. Yeah. And then after some time, you realize that you will never let go because of something outside. You can only let go inside. Doesn't matter what's happening outside, what your life looks like, what your childhood trauma is, if it's still working, still affecting you, whatever, what kind of problems you have. All you can do is surrender to what is. And then starts the second part of the journey.
So would you say that people that, sign up for Tantra, start Tantra, are they actually naturally signing up also for transformation? Is it the same thing? You sign up for Tantra, you sign up for transformation.
I think not necessarily. It's like I was just watching your previous live, and you were speaking about how people think that a tantric journey is something about having a lot of different partners. And so there are a lot of people who are coming to Tantra because they think they have an idea of how it's going to make their life easier, or more convenient to basically hide their shadow even deeper. Because, for example, if they have a fear of intimacy, and that's why they want to have all these multiple partners, and they think, I'm going to go to Tantra and it's going to be even easier, I'm going to get full permission to do that. And then there's, also several options. You can either start accepting what life is giving you, what Tantra is offering you, all the situations and knowledge and wisdom and tools. And then you can realize, oh my God, there is something deeper, there is something more, something important in me that I want to discover.
So you're saying that it's possible to stay at the superficial level and even kind of use Tantra to fuel your shadow in a way. And it's almost like a choice maybe. But I'm wondering, at the end of the day, if you stay, can you really stay superficial, or is it going to suck you in and have you look at yourself? Like,
I've seen different cases, and I know a bunch of people who have been in the tantric world for many, many years, and still they're not really taking the leap.
Right.
And also there's this phenomena, which is when you just start your journey, it feels like you're transforming a lot and you're changing a lot and you're seeing a lot and getting and releasing a lot, and everything's just changing so fast, and like you had so many problems and they're getting solved really fast. But then the deeper you go, the less shadow you have, but it's much deeper. And so then it becomes harder to see, and it takes longer, and it takes deeper processes to to deal with the next piece. And then sometimes people come to some point where they just kind of stop, especially if they're deep in on this journey and they have some authority already and they become teachers or whatever. And it's very easy to build this structure, this life, this set of beliefs, and the people around you that support those beliefs, that it becomes really, really comfortable to be in the shadow that is left, and sometimes almost impossible to see it.
Is that part of why you have decided? I know that you haven't been, part of a bigger organization. Like, I always see you as you, and you do collaborations, but it's you as you. Is that a reason for that, or is it just that you haven't found like that group of people that you want to co-create with, or that organization that you resonate with the values? What's the reason why I kind of see you as, the priestess that do her own thing?
I think it's that too, but not only. I mean, it's also a part of my own development journey. Like, I used to have a lot of problems with authority and a lot of trust issues and things like this, and so it was always hard to be a part of something bigger. As soon as I see there is something that is not resonating and something that I don't agree with, it was just hard even when I wanted to. But then also, yeah, it's like there was always something pushing me to grow more, to develop more, to search more. And I remember even in the beginning of my path, I would meet some teacher and I would be like, oh my God, this is amazing. I really love this. And I would go to one workshop or something. And then I would come in a couple of months and be like, oh my God, I'm so not interested anymore. I have outgrown that person already.
Mm-hmm.
And that was happening many, many times. And yeah, like there's always like I always have my own opinion or something, my own vision, and there's always something that is, it's like there's not enough space, and there actually was one teacher I stayed with for a long time, and I was a part of the organization, a part of the team and things like this. And then at some point I realized I cannot grow there because it's limiting, the structure is limiting,
Right.
And if I want to have a structure, I want to create my own structure or something, because I have a bigger vision. I want, yeah, it's always been like this. Mm-hmm. So I guess there are a lot of beautiful communities and beautiful, schools and organizations. But I feel it's like I want to take all the best things from everywhere and create something else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my thing.
I love that. Maybe you'll have your own, you attract the people and start your own thing soon. I mean, you are already in English, it feels like what you're doing in Bali, it is with other people. So maybe they have to come to you and then you start it from zero. So we have some comments, people speaking about yoga and tantra, and they say like, you're speaking about tantra in a sexual way. And I was just thinking that everything we said today, we haven't even spoken about sex. We are more speaking about tantra as the life, journey. So maybe maybe you want to touch a bit upon that, like how important is the sexual part in the tantra you're speaking about, and where does it come in, and why? Like for me, I often say the deepest wound is a sexual wound. So like where does sexuality come into tantra when you speak about it, because it's also a broader life perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is also one of very interesting topics. I get this question a lot, actually. And the way I see it nowadays, in the neo-tantra world, in the modern tantra, it's all about sex, basically. It's a lot of, not all, but it's a lot about sex. And a lot of people have this perspective that tantra is something about sex or orgies or whatever. And the way I see it, the reason that's happening is exactly because of what I said before, because tantra starts lighting up all the shadows in order to integrate them, to heal them and integrate them. And sexuality nowadays is one of the biggest shadows, basically sexuality and death. These are the biggest shadows, which are very similar, actually. And so that's the reason it is shining light onto the sexual part right now. And it is important, and it gets, very distorted, but it is important to look there right now as a society. So in the neo-tantra, obviously, there's a lot of space for sexuality because it needs to be looked at and restored and healed and, recognized. And at the same time, for me, Tantra is not, I mean, of course, sex and sexuality is a part of it because it's a part of life. It's quite a big part of life. This is something we're all born from. And also sexuality, for me, is not only, about sex. Sexuality is something way bigger than that. It's our life force. It's our aliveness. It's our, power. This is something that is serving as a fuel for everything else that we're doing and being.
Yeah.
This is the basic energy. So it's super important, and it's sometimes I feel really sad that it gets so distorted and just becomes so small, such a small little obvious piece, but actually it's just really beautiful and really big. To me, it's life. I work like in these retreats, for example, in Bali. We work so much with the nature and natural feminine shamanism of connecting with the nature forces and basically serving life, being transmitters of life, bringing life into everything we're doing and everywhere we're going, and breathing life and moving life and singing life and just being
This
a
is interesting.
and that is sexuality. All of that is sexuality.
So this, maybe to clarify for people, you could basically, if the practice that you had was a women's group where you did these things, or a men's group where you did men's work, would you say that that's still a way of going on a tantric transformational journey, doing it with just same gender? Would that also be?
Most definitely, yes. Because it's not about gender, it's not about the sexual act, as we see it on TV or whatever, the way we're being conditioned to think about it. It's so much bigger. It's in our sensuality, in the way we, in the way we live, in the way we breathe, in the way we feel life, experience life. So of course it is super possible, and it's happening all the time, and it doesn't matter. It's not about sex per se, It can be there, but it's not about it.
It's interesting because I work with human design, for example, and there it's quite theoretical, right? And it's about the experiment of being human and being you, but it often gets stuck up here. And then I take in simple things like breath, movement, and sound, and I'm like, it's about feeling alive here, so that you actually can go out and be yourself. And that is, breath and microcosmic orbit and all these things, that is also tantric practices. It's actually more of the traditional ones. So I feel that's important. And for me, this is the other question that I have and that we had comments about. So the tantric path and the yogic path, and they being, kind of stemming a little bit from the same. But how would you say that the tantric transformational journey is different from a yogic transformational journey?
Honestly, I'm not an expert in yoga and theory especially. So it's hard to say. Like, I'm just going to be, making up things if I try to answer this question.
Yeah, there is something for me where yoga is concentration, and it's almost concentration in a way. I would say it's a more masculine path. It's a path of concentration to raise awareness, to sublimate the energy, to be able to hold so much. But it's a path of concentration, and then the concentration one day, no, not one day, gradually, you purify the vehicle, and then one day you have purified a lot. And I guess that for me, Tantra is the feminine path. It's like, I don't have a concentration on a gradual, it's life, it's Shakti, it's a feminine. It's much, for me, and there's something, I don't know, but for me there's a refinement in yoga, but in Tantra there is this fountain of water that is truth and life and Gaia. So there's something with that as a woman, I guess, also, that it's more, I feel like I'm a seeker of truth. And sometimes for me, it's a method. It's not truth. It might lead to truth, but I can get bored with a method. And I guess that's why there is some freedom in Tantra, or something. Like, maybe you can speak more to the Tantric journey, so we understand, well, what it is, what that allowing, that I feel is kind of a key word for Tantra. Why that is so, why that's such a good catalyst for a transformational journey.
Yeah, what you're saying now it's resonating. Like, if you look at yoga from this perspective, And I think this is also the modern perspective. This is what it's become. Yeah, most of the yoga looks like this. There's also yin yoga, for example, or tantra yoga, or more feminine ways of doing yoga, which are completely opposite. And there's what you're speaking about is basically having a goal. That's the masculine path. Having a goal and going towards the goal, reaching the goal, fighting for the goal, achieving something. And the feminine path is completely opposite. It's just being. It's just being in chaos and just all of the aspects of life and the richness of life, experiencing, not going somewhere, but experiencing, not thinking about it, experiencing what is here right now in my body, because I am also a channel of life, right? All of us are. We're just channels. Like we have this human ego and we think, oh, this is me, this is my emotion, this is my experience, this is my this and that, I'm creating this. No, we're just, the way I see it, we're just being channels, and we're just, taking this energy in and letting it out, taking it in and expressing it. And this is basically our gift, especially as women, to take in everything that is coming and alchemize it in our hearts and express it with our whole being, our radiance, our alive body, and just basically be in that experience, in this flow of life that is happening. And that, of course, requires it sounds easy, yeah, like just being. But why are we not all just being? Yeah. So to come back to this nature of just being, it requires a lot of transformation from where we are at as society.
Would you say it requires courage? Would you say you have to be courageous?
For sure. For sure, because it requires looking at the shadow, looking at the things you don't want to look at, looking at things that feel scary. Because every time we're doing something new, basically our system feels danger. Because if I've never done this before, I don't know if I'm going to survive. And so that's why so many people choose to be in this very small, limited world, but the one that looks familiar.
So speak a little bit more about that. So of course, when you look at a shadow, when you face a shadow that you have been distracting yourself from before, then like even neurological, like what happens with the body, what happens with the mind, and what is the way through it? What do you do? You are like, okay, I'm not going to run away this time. And you have like, what happens when you face the shadow? What is that process? What does it like? What is the integration of the shadow, and how might it look?
Well, there are again several different ways. There are therapeutic ways, there are shamanic ways, there are yogic ways, there are different ways. And I prefer shamanic ways, of course. So a shamanic way would be to just expand in that. So you just surrender and you expand.
And do you need support to do that? Would it be better to do it in a women's group or in a retreat, or when you're by yourself and you have that shadow that you always ran away from, it's coming back, you can feel in your breath or something that's there. How, like, can you just stay in it by yourself, although the body thinks is going to die? Or
Well, I mean, there are different therapeutic tools and trauma work, because what you're speaking about, what's happening in the body, that's basically trauma stored in the body. So why do we even have shadow? Because we had some kind of trauma. Because at some point in life, somebody told us or showed us, or in some way we experienced that quality or action, or, that piece of us being dangerous. And so we freeze in the body in a way. It's not necessarily like we can freeze, we can run, but we can fight, right? But it's like this part of our body and soul basically gets stuck. Yeah. And so next time when we decide, okay, now I'm going to work with my shadow, and the shadow is coming in our face, and then suddenly that piece gets activated, and again it's afraid, and again it wants to run or freeze or die or hide or fight or whatever. And then, you know, we need to be aware, first of all, that this is happening. Like, that's the first step, always, to realize what's happening, to see it, to find clarity, and stop reacting the same thing over and over again. And then there are different tools, you know, breathing and moving in specific ways and doing different practices to help our system to expand, to expand, to be able to hold this amount of energy. Because it requires more. There's more, right? So when we contract, we can transmit less energy, and we become smaller and weaker, and, you know, less inspired or depressed, or we'll basically lose our life energy. And so when we find a piece that is stuck, a piece of shadow or a piece of trauma, and we start releasing it, all this energy is coming out, and then somehow we need to transmit the energy. And if we're not used to doing that, then we're just going to contract back. Right. So for that, we need all these tools. For example, embodiment. So there are a lot of, embodiment. There are a lot of tools there that actually help doing that, help moving the energy in the body and in our system. And so then there's space to expand, and then this piece can start relaxing, and we can say, oh my God, I'm not going to die. It's okay. You know? So and then next time we have more capacity.
And these are the kinds of tools that you are in your retreats, for example, or your women's groups. These are the kind of tools that you are showing, that you're learning together, and that you are holding space for each other. Or is this part of the work that you do, or is this a solitary work that each human needs to do on their own?
Yes, for sure. That is a part of what I do in my workshops and retreats and sessions. In women's groups and women's work, there's a lot of embodiment, a lot of really learning to contain a lot of energy, to move energy, to become life, to really become a clear transmitter, and a lot of trauma work, and a lot of clearing childhood wounds, and, you know, a lot of shamanic work. There's a lot of stuff we're doing, but also this is something a person, of course, can do by themselves. So when they learn these tools, they can then apply them in their everyday life, and so they become more able to take care of all of themselves.
So there is something with both women and men when it comes to the physical bodies. Like, we have this like love-hate. We kind of, you know, there is pleasure, there are senses and all that in the body. And at the same time, many times we're not happy with how the body looks, or how the body feels, or how, you know, maybe childbirth, or, you know, or erection problems. Like, it makes us have this like love-hate for the body. It gives us pleasure, but we also cannot accept it. So is it a requirement to have overcome that in Tantra, or how can Tantra maybe be a way back to a different relationship to our own body? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, of course. This is also an amazing topic. Thank you for asking. It's beautiful and super important, I believe. And of course, Tantra does not require for that to be fixed already when you start the tantric path. And of course, Tantra really, really helps to integrate that, because all that unlove for the body comes from disconnection, because the body is basically the feminine. This is the heart of Tantra, the feminine, loving the feminine, you know, valuing, honoring the feminine, because the feminine is life. It is what is, you know, filling up all this space with all the beauty of all the different colors and textures and qualities of life. And that is what enables us to even feel. It's the body. It's the body that enables us to have this human experience, to feel, to smell, to see, to, you know, to have a human experience. And the reason we don't love the body is because we're disconnected from that knowledge. We're disconnected from our own nature, from our own roots. And so when we start the tantric path, after a while, we start connecting back to this wisdom. Step by step, we start remembering our nature. And then the love for the body, it happens naturally. It's not because, oh, I lose 10 pounds, or I do this, or I change my diet, or I, buy new clothes, or change my hair. It's completely not about that. It just comes from the inside as a natural knowledge, as a natural feeling of love for something that is alive.
Yeah, I mean, I see what I see in festivals and in retreats is that I see that the shame for the body, it seems like it has dissolved. Like people have body paint and people and sometimes you're even sometimes surprised. You're like, oh, can genitals look like that? Or can breasts look like that? But it's beautiful. Like it's so much diversity. And when we don't try to hide it anymore, there is this diversity and this awe, I would say, for the body. And I feel like that is one of the first things that fall away when you start a tantric path. And I have a friend who said he only had this type of certain women that's exactly his type, kind of the Barbie look, very, very, conventional way. And then starting tantra and realizing that we are often so focused on the visual, and maybe also with pornography and these things. But when you go into tantra and you start to use all your senses and you don't overuse your eyes, then suddenly the senses tells you that somebody who doesn't have a perfect body might have an energy that is so rich and so full, and so also connect two people that have an energy that match. And so I feel this is one of the things you said in the beginning. Goes very fast if you don't have a very, 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 maybe like for a normal person that doesn't have some kind of very, very deep trauma around body image. But even I see, especially because we say the control, we come in and we are controlling. So even when it comes to eating disorders and these kinds of things, I feel like there is a lot of relief on how we look at bodies, and how we even in many tantric workshops can speak about shame and can come and be vulnerable. And just through that vulnerability is part of the courage that you speak about. Then things can start to dissolve and we can start to come back. But could you speak a little bit more about the energetic reconnection to the body? Because this is more about the mental ideas of the body. But what is this? What is the reconnection that happens, and what is this disconnect about that is so prevailing everywhere in our world?
I mean, the disconnect, what is the disconnect? I don't even know where to start. There's so much disconnect, which is coming from everywhere, basically, all the ideas we're being fed in social media. And, every time we're looking at these magazines and thinking, oh, we should look like this, but we don't, there's a disconnection happening. Every time since we're born, when we're told, you cannot do this and you have to do this, we're disconnecting from the body, because we cannot trust ourselves anymore, because what we're feeling is true. Everybody is telling us it's not.
Right. And that's both for women and men, especially, because I feel like the ideas of the body might be more in women, but what about the ways that men are conditioned too that make them disconnect? Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their stuff. For women it's one thing. For men it's their penis is supposed to function in this specific way, and if it's not, and by the way, the idea is completely ridiculous, because this is not how everything functions. Mm-hmm. And also, men are not supposed to feel. They're supposed to be strong and this and that and macho and whatever, and that completely disconnects from all the realm of sensations, which is very closely connected to energy. Because if we're all the time in the head and we think, oh, I'm supposed to be this and that, and I am also not allowed to feel, how in the world am I supposed to feel energy? How in the world am I supposed to connect to another human being authentically? How in the world am I supposed to, make love, which is not coming from here?
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that, if you wanted to give, kind of round up, but give some practical tips, because we also have questions. Do I have to do it with somebody? Can I do it on my own? So maybe you could give a couple of practices for solo, like try these things to reconnect, and maybe something for couples too, how to reconnect to themselves and each other.
Well, yeah, you definitely don't have to have a partner. There's a million different practices you can do by yourself. You can do with a lover, you can do with a friend, you can do with nature,
Mhm.
with whatever. There is so much space for creativity there. But I mean, if we're speaking about somebody who wants to start, then what I really love is breathing, just breath. It's the simplest thing that is always here, and that we tend to forget.
Mhm.
Like if I look at, because I work with breath work a lot, and I tend to notice, even when I'm walking on the street, and I'm looking at somebody, I'm noticing how they breathe. And so most people don't breathe.
Mhm.
Like they just don't breathe. They breathe like 5% maybe of their capacity.
Mhm.
And so when we're not breathing, and also, by the way, even in Tantra, I see a lot of people doing all these practices and not breathing. And when you're doing something and not breathing, nothing is happening, basically. It's
Yeah.
happening here again. It's an idea of doing something. So when we start breathing a little bit deeper, bringing a little bit more attention into the way we're breathing, and therefore bringing the attention inside into the body.
Right.
Yeah, when we focus on breathing, we start focusing on what is happening inside. So just breathing, and it's really nice because we're all, stuck in a lot of unhealthy masculine patterns. So this time it's really good for everybody to do some kind of a feminine breath, even for men, because if we're speaking about feeling and energies and sensations, that is the feminine space. So, even to make love to a woman, a man also needs to be in a lot more feminine space, because otherwise he won't even be able to connect to her.
Mhm.
So this works for everybody. And the simplest thing you can do is just start breathing through the mouth, because that's the feminine. So if we're breathing through the nose, that's the masculine breath. It connects us to action, to clarity, to making decisions, things like this. Even you can feel physically that it
Mhm.
goes here,
Mhm.
kind of. And so if we're breathing through the mouth and really relaxing and starting to breathe slower, and just, bringing attention inside and starting to notice what is the felt sense in the body. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just breathing and coming back inside for some time as a practice.
Mhm.
This is already so much more connecting us to the world of the felt sense, of sensations, of energies. We start being so much more aware. And this seems very, very simple, but this is actually a completely magical practice. It helps with so many things. It heals, it helps you to trust more, it helps you to love more, it helps you to make decisions at times of confusion. You know, it's really beautiful. It connects to the intuition and to creativity. So this is the first and simplest thing you can start doing as a solo, for example. And
Mhm.
then if you're doing something with a partner, very good to also do this. Like if you start breathing together, if you start eye gazing, for example, these are the first, simplest steps to connection.
Mhm.
Like there are so many people who are making love and never looking in each other's eyes.
Yeah.
So basically what they're doing is they're just playing out something in their mind
Mhm.
using another body, because
Yeah.
they're not being connected really. And it's so important, and it saves so many relationships to actually just start eye gazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it saddens me, to think about that. But but it's easy. It's just to open your eyes. But that's also one thing, because when you do that, you are going to see things and feel things you haven't felt before many times. And that's part of
Exactly.
the that's starting the journey.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
And yes, I see a lot of people, for example, when, in workshops, I tell people to start eye gazing and they can't do it. They just feel really uncomfortable and they start giggling and like thinking, oh, this is stupid, and looking away and waiting for it to be over and things like this. because of course it starts bringing all the discomfort that is stuck inside and the shadows, like we were speaking about before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, one tool for shadow work: start eye gazing.
Well, thank you so much. I love the femininity of the conversation. Like, this was a conversation with no real plan, and with what came up, right? I like that flow of it. So thank you for sharing your wisdom. We are actually going to say hi to the people on Tantric Connection on Instagram. So we are going to be on there in like 3 minutes. So I'm just going to post in the everywhere so that you have, it's Tantric Connection Instagram. And thank you, Lilu, and see you very soon on Instagram.
Thank you too. It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Bye for now.